foot on the bed and sits down again. "Dear Vigdís," he reads out loud and continues in a lower voice. "Here I am back from London at last. How are you? Is the hotel busy? You told me the other day that you would be attending some meeting today, so I shall just write to you. It was a good trip. I visited Jonas, though he was busy studying for his exams. Then I went to some concerts at the Vortex and Pizza Express. Concerts at Pizza Express. That's the damn jazz place he was always trying to drag me along to. You're such a pussy, Emil." Of course, that's not quite true. I remember once trying to get him to come with me to a jazz concert in London, but that was at the Pizza on the Park, not Pizza Express. He carries on reading. "As you can imagine, I bought some music and a few books, etc. At this point, Howard stops reading the unfinished letter and asks himself who this Vigdís can be. Then he carries on reading quietly, snorts at something I have written, and stops reading when he gets to the words, 'to settle my accounts.' He repeats the words out loud with a question mark at the end. What on earth does that mean? Does the man mean, 'to settle my accounts'? Adding in a husky voice as if it came from the throat of some grumpy old man, "Emil and Vigdís, who are you fucking these days, Vigdís?" Next, he pretends to be a small child trying to read from a primer. Emil likes fucking Vigdís. Vigdís always says yes when Emil wants to go to bed. She wants Emil to be happy, and Emil is always happy because Vigdís is so good to Emil. But now little Emil is sad because he went away and there is no Vigdís there. Emil misses Vigdís very much. He has written her a letter. How is it possible that I know this man? There is nothing in my life or character that leads to the conclusion that Howard and I should meet. My reaction to this soliloquy is to imagine that the directors of the institution in Sweden where he was kept saw no other solution than to get rid of him, even though he still had to serve 2/3 of his confinement. I can quite understand the decision. However, it is unforgivable if that is the case, which I really don't believe it is, that the directors did not inform me and others who knew Howard in good time so that we could take some precautions before he arrived in Iceland. Now he has suddenly lost interest in the letter to Vigdís. He stands up and leaves the room. I don't hear him take his anorak with him, and when I am sure that he has gone out, I stick my left hand out from under the bed and feel around until I touch the nylon. I let go of it straight away to avoid dragging it down to the floor. I hope that he will get going now, but then realize that he is obviously going to wait for me. He has come a long way. He clearly knows about the money I have won, and he is going to make me suffer for not taking him up on his offer in the kitchen at Brook Road. He knew quite well at the time that I had those £400, or rather 800, and from his point of view, I could have easily managed without them. He has started on the whiskey. I hear him unscrew the lid and fetch a glass from the cupboard. He obviously takes his time choosing the right glass and starts whistling Habanera again. The glass rings. I guess that he selects one of my blue Itala glasses. Then he pours so much into it that I have to accept the fact that he is not leaving anytime soon. That uncomfortable fact is made more blatant when he opens a beer can. If it isn't out of the plastic bag, then it's the fourth from my pack, and walks into the living room. I hear him going through the CDs on the table, and after a few minutes, the first tones of Mysterious Traveler by Weather Report can be heard. Though I am far from being in the mood for jokes, I find it really amusing that he should pick this track. It is so very appropriate. What is this? He exclaims in pleasure, and it's quite clear that on this occasion he is referring to the music. He gets a kick out of hearing something that is strange. He feels that he is more normal and has more freedom to follow his own whims. He is obviously interested in the things that I brought home. I listened to him reading out the titles of the videos and piling up the CDs like a stock of cards. I shiver with anxiety at the thought of the scratches that his treatment will inflict. Where can this guy be, he says. One doesn't start heating water and then run straight out to a bar. No, Emil, one doesn't behave like that. I really wish that I could answer him, but I'm not thinking of coming out. I didn't come home to meet Howard Knudsen. We had only known each other for about a month when we went off to London together. And it was by complete chance that Howard, whom I didn't really know at all, accompanied me. I had just started working in a hardware store when a friend of my father, a former professional footballer and joint owner of a soap factory in England, invited me to stay in the flat he owned in London for 6 weeks and take care of some animals that lived there. A cat, a rabbit, a guinea pig, and an ancient iguana that had been given to him by a Mexican colleague from the world of football. His daughter lived in the house, which was situated in Stoke Newington in North London, but she was going away on a trip to Europe, so she needed someone to look after the flat and the animals. The daughter, Margaret Ósk, whom was always called Ósk, had spent several years in London learning to play the violin, and I had even seen her play with a string quintet a few years back in Reykjavik. I met her father Örn at a party my parents held several weeks before Harvard and I left for London. My father insisted that I talk to Örn because we shared an interest in books on water skiing, mountaineering, and exploring, however strange it may sound. We got on well, and when Örn found out that I wasn't doing anything special at the time his daughter would be away, he invited me to use his house. He even offered to pay me pocket money, as he called it, more as a joke, I think, while I stayed there. He told me that I could take someone with me if I wanted to. He would pay for another person as well. I didn't take long to think over that tempting offer, and I remember phoning Örn the following day to see if it was still open. In the beginning, I intended to go alone, but Harvard was very interested when I mentioned the trip to my workmates, not least because I had blurted out that I could take someone with me. In the short period that I had worked in the shop, I had gotten to know Harvard a little, and although we didn't have much in common, which I was quite happy about, I thought that he was interesting to talk to, especially about music and taste in music, a subject which of course one cannot discuss in any depth. Besides, I was much more receptive to odd and even dubious characters at the time, and I can't deny that Harvard aroused my curiosity in this respect. I don't remember if I agreed straight away or if I took some time to think it over, but the outcome was that he accompanied me to London. Originally, he only intended to stay 3 weeks, but when a month had passed, I saw no other option than to kick him out. It became apparent that the Harvard who shared the house with me in Stoke Newington was not the same interesting Harvard whom I had got to know in the hardware store. And now, as he appears 5 years later, it seems obvious that Harvard who climbed in through my window a few minutes ago is the same Harvard who lived with me on Brook Road. And that really scares me. I don't know what to do. I was looking forward to coming home, listening to the music I had bought abroad, having a drink to unwind after the journey, and talking to my friends, who I expect were also looking forward to seeing me. Not to mention the fact that I am expecting a visit from a woman with whom I have already fallen in love. I decide to give Harvard half an hour at the most. I'm not going to lie here squashed under the bed longer than that. I already feel as if there are cement works going on in my head. And now I skip some chapters, and the last chapter I read is it's a little bit later in the story, still in the same flat and the same evening. And he is thinking about Harvard. I don't really have to read because you're reading. One aspect of Harvard's character I got to know while we stayed on Brook Road was his fear of the dark. I quickly noticed how uncomfortable he felt when he was alone after dark, and I got him to admit this weakness one evening when he told me for the second time that he always thought he could hear someone behind him whenever he went upstairs. During the day, he was often noisy, especially when he had been drinking, which was usually the case, but in the evening he was calmer and yet sometimes slightly apprehensive as he walked around the flat. I teased him by saying that he had read too many English ghost stories, but he gave me the impression that there was something else, something more profound that was bothering him. I thought there had maybe been some incident in his childhood which I had begun to imagine as rather bleak and joyless. I could just see Harvard as a child, bent and hollow-chested, surrounded by his grandmother's old furniture and belongings while his mother and father were drinking next door. Harvard wasn't very fond of the cat on Brook Road, especially after it jumped on him on the sofa one evening while we were watching television.